To begin with, we'll have a brief overview of each methodology. In the 1940s and 50s, Zoltan Kodály began to develop his music method in the schools of Hungary, where he would try it out on the children in the schools. The main structure of this methodology is prepare, present, and practice. First, you prepare the students with the concept, then you present it in real life in its form, then you practice that concept with the notation. The primary goal? For students to be exposed to all elements of music and to develop their musicianship through singing. Within this methodology, I find it unique that he only wants children to learn from high-quality folk songs that are native to their country or location. Another thing I find to be unique is his heavy use of solfege, hand signs, rhythmic symbols, and audiation. Lastly, this methodology focuses on where the students are developmentally, and I find this to be an important aspect to consider when teaching music. Though this method is very effective in a musical classroom, I do think that it has its own disadvantages. One of the disadvantages to this methodology is that students aren't being exposed to different music from different cultures than their own. The other disadvantage to this methodology is the heavy use of solfege and hand signs. While this is an effective way to approach different musical concepts, I find that this could be a kind of dry approach to a musical concept. And I think, as music educators, we could do something a little more creative than this. German composer Karl Orff began to develop this methodology with Dorothy Gunther in the 1920s. The primary sequence of this methodology is also prepare, present, and practice. The goal of this methodology is for students to comprehensively learn music through exploration, singing, playing, dancing, improvisation, and composing. One of the traits that I like about this methodology is that it builds off the knowledge of what kids find to be relevant, such as playing, imagining, and just creating things. I like this part about the Orff method because if you can make music relevant to a child's life, the more likely they are to comprehend it and it'll stick with them. As you can see above, all these instruments that you see are Orff instruments that are specifically tailored for young musicians. And for this reason, I find that the Orff methodology sets itself apart from all the other methodologies because of these specifically tailored instruments for young children. One of the disadvantages I find for the Orff method is that it might take time for students to adapt to this sequence. Because this methodology incorporates a lot of creativity, improvisation, playing, kids might be turned off by this at first because it's something they haven't gotten used to yet. But within time, kids will get used to it and they'll finally be able to tap into their creative mind. And now we'll move on to Edwin Gordon's method. Outside of creating new music learning theories, Edwin Gordon was a very effective teacher, professor, and author. Gordon began developing his music learning theories during the 1950s through the 1970s, and then he started publishing his findings. What sets this method apart from all the others is that it's whole part whole when it comes to the structure, rather than prepare, present, and practice. One of the primary goals of this method is for students to experience a rich musical foundation in order for them to reach their highest musical potential when they're older. One of the concepts that I found unique about this method is that rather than imitating like Kodály or Orff, this method relies off recall or memorization. I also found it interesting that he believed before the age of 9, that's the key area where children need to experience as many musical concepts as possible in order for them to have the highest potential in music later on in their future. One of the disadvantages to this methodology is that it doesn't really tap into other worldly cultures. Now, we're going to move on to Dalcroze. Dalcroze was also an educator, and when he taught solfege and harmony, he only realized that students were unable to hear the harmonies he was trying to teach to them. This led to him developing eurythmics, Greek for good flow or good rhythm. Eurythmics beautifully marries our bodies to the music, where our bodies are the vehicle for us interpreting or describing or even expressing the music around us. The goal of this method is for children to develop a sense of predictability of phrasing, expressiveness, and rhythm of the music while being physically aware of their own bodies. A great way to describe this is that our bodies are the vehicle or the instrument, and the music is what we live and experience. And that alone I find to be unique within itself. However, I find the structure of Dalcroze lessons could be a little weird at first for kids. And I also find it a little intimidating trying to improvise on piano for my classes in the future. And now, last but definitely not least, world music pedagogy. Ethnomusicologist Patricia Campbell was the first person to coin this term, world music pedagogy. World music pedagogy began developing in the 1960s, however, it wasn't until the 2000s where it began to finally take shape. One of my favorite quotes that perfectly describes this methodology is, quote, "World music pedagogy aims at the global expansion of perspectives on music and culture that goes past objective questions and ideas we usually approached in music." The primary goal of world music pedagogy is to engage students musically through multiple cultural perspectives on a global scale. And I find this to be unique because students are actually able to experience music from a variety of cultures and traditions. I also like this because it establishes a firm value to the music that they're learning and listening to. But most importantly, the reason why I like this the most is that it enables students to see the world through a different lens and perspective. And from an educational standpoint, I find it to be critical for students to engage in cultures besides their own. The only limitation I personally could find in this methodology is that parents and colleagues might criticize you when using this methodology because students might not always be reading notes on a page or even using the same structure as Western culture. Now we start with what would I use as a teacher, and I would personally blend a few of these approaches because there's no right answer with using just one. I personally would blend together the Orff methodologies and Dalcroze as well as world music pedagogy. I believe that students learn best when they are playing and imagining because it's in their world, it's relevant to them. And I also believe that Dalcroze movement for children, it sticks with them more personally, I believe. And students just have fun with it and they learn the concepts through a physical way. I also believe that world music, exposing kids to these cultures is completely crucial for their education because too often we look at the world in our own perspective and from our own Western culture. And all I want to do as an educator is to shed light on these beautiful cultures around the world, and I think world music is a great way to do that. Thank you for watching my video. I'm extremely awkward when it comes to talking at a video camera, if you can't tell, but I appreciate for you watching and bearing with me. So thanks for watching.